Here's a flat view of a playing card. Let's put this into perspective and add some realistic shadows to it. Begin by going into Free Transform. Now hold Command or Control and drag each corner point to its new location. It'll all look pretty weird until you get the last point in place, and then it'll suddenly make sense. Now let's add an edge to this card to give it some thickness. Hold Command or Control and click on the thumbnail in the Layers palette. Now make sure the Move tool is active, and hold the Option or Alt key as you nudge the selection up 2 pixels. Let's now inverse that selection and hide the edges. We can now use the Burn tool to shade the edges of the card to give it some depth. Now hold Command or Control and click the layer thumbnail again to load up the whole selection. We want to add a shadow to this card, so we'll start by feathering that selection, and a 3 pixel feather is fine. We need to nudge this down so that the shadow appears below the card, so switch to a Selection tool and nudge down using the cursor keys 2 pixels. By nudging with the Selection tool rather than the Move tool active, we move the selection area and not the contents. To fill this with our shadow, press Shift-Delete to bring up the Fill dialog. We want the shadow to appear behind the card at an opacity of around 50%. And there it is. Now let's duplicate this card layer. Once again, hold Command or Control as we click on this layer to load it up. Now, switch to the Move tool. Hold down the Option or Alt key, we'll hide the edges, and drag to make copies of this card, releasing the mouse button between each copy that you make. Don't make the stack too regular. And deselect. So there's our stack of cards with a shadow between each one. The trouble is, we've also got a shadow outside the cards where we don't want it. And here's how to get rid of that. Command or Control and click on the layer thumbnail again. When we go into Quick Mask mode, we can see the area selected highlighted in red, and you can just make out a faint red tinge around the edge where the shadow is selected. That's what we want to get rid of. Bring up the Levels dialog and drag the white slider to the left. This will tighten up the selection, so when we now go out of Quick Mask and inverse that selection, we can just delete to get rid of that shadow. So there's a shadow where we want it, between the cards, and not outside the cards where we don't want it.